Hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to explain you about cyclones and anticyclones and their difference, as well as about jet streams. This video is also again going to be in Hindi as well as in English. So let us now see what is a cyclone. A cyclone is a small low pressure system with winds blowing anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere. So it is a point where low pressure is created. Because of high temperature, the air expands. It rises, which leads to low pressure on the ground surface. So how is a zone of low pressure created? So when the temperature increases, the air expands, it rises, leaving a vacuum near the surface. This vacuum has to be filled in by the winds which are coming from the high pressure or the cooler region. Therefore, in a cyclonic condition, there is an inflow of winds, where the winds are coming from the high pressure zone to the lower pressure zone. Now, due to the Coriolis effect and the rotation of the earth, the cyclonic winds which are blowing, they blow in an anti-clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere. So in the center, when there is a cyclonic condition, there is a very low pressure which is created, but around this low pressure there is a very strong area of spiraling winds which are blowing all around this particular point. So basically, when we see a cyclone, it is mostly or roughly circular in structure or can be oval in structure or form. Hence, when the isobars are representing cyclones and showing them on a weather map, we can show it in a circular or oval shape. Let's start from the beginning how a cyclone begins. When there are two masses of air, one is a cold air and the other is a warm air mass of different temperature, densities, as well as they are blowing in different directions or in opposite directions. When they clash against each other, a front is created. So the warm air is lighter, it rises, and the cold air mass is heavier, it subsides underneath. This brings heavy rainfall with thunder and lightning. So at the frontal zone, when the warm air is meeting with the cold air mass and the warm air mass is rising over the cold air mass, this warm air, which contains a lot of moisture also because it's warm, it contains all the water vapor, this condenses as it meets the cold front and brings a lot of rainfall. Now, when the cyclone approaches, the sky becomes very dark, it is overclouded, there's a lot of cloud and humidity, and also accompanied with heavy rainfall, thunder, and lightning. So, in a cyclone, there's an inflow of winds and it causes a lot of rainfall. A cyclone will always move in the direction and flow in the direction of a regular wind system of a particular area. Therefore, if it's a westerly, then most of the cyclones will move towards eastwards direction. And if it's a trade wind, then it will always move in the westerly direction. So westerlies are coming from the western direction and they move in the eastern direction. Similarly, the cyclones which are happening in those regions where the westerlies blow, the cyclones are also going to move towards the eastern direction. Similarly, the trade winds are easterly winds. They are coming from the eastern direction but moving in the western direction. Similarly, if a cyclone happens in the region which has got trade winds blowing, it will always move in the westerly direction, in the direction where the trade winds are blowing towards. The tropical cyclones are very different from the cyclones which happen in the temperate regions. The tropical cyclones are also called as depressions. Now, the depressions or the tropical cyclones in the temperate regions are much larger. That means cyclones which are blowing or occurring in the temperate regions are much larger in size. Sometimes they even cover a distance of 3,000 kilometers and more, and they are often oval in shape. Even though the temperate cyclones are larger in size, but they are not very violent as compared to the cyclones which happen in the tropical region. and they travel in a well defined path, in a well defined velocity. The speed or the velocity can be up to 35 to 50 km an hour. Tropical cyclones. They mostly originate over an ocean or a sea in a tropical or a subtropical region. They are more violent as compared to the temperate cyclones, and they cause severe damage to life as well as to human property as well as natural property. Okay, the regions around the globe where normally the tropical cyclones occur are along the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea, and the western part of the Pacific Ocean, as well as the eastern and the western coastal regions of India, the east of the southern part of Africa, as well as the northern part of Australia. These tropical cyclones are known by different local names in different parts of the world. Like they are known as hurricanes in West Indies, cyclones in the Indian Ocean and Indian subcontinent, typhoons in China Sea. And the winds which blow in the northern part of Australia are locally known as the Willy Willies. There's another type of cyclonic winds which blow in the Mississippi basin of USA, which is locally known as a tornado. So in a tornado there is basically a very high velocity of wind which blows around 300 kilometers per hour, and it is distinguished or it can be categorized by a twisting and tunnel shaped cloud which can move at a very high speed. This tornado, which is blowing at a very high velocity, starts from a single point at the surface and it extends from the base to a cumulonimbus cloud layer on top. The small focal point which touches the ground of the tornado creates a lot of destruction. Now, tornadoes are also locally known as twisters because they are continuously rotating and spinning on its axis, and it is at a very high velocity which causes huge amounts of massive destruction. They are the most destructive of all the thunderstorms. They can devastate any entire village in few seconds. Recently, there has been a very violent and destructive tornado which had occurred at Wisconsin and Massachusetts in USA. Anticyclones. Anticyclones are just the opposite of cyclones. There is an area of high atmospheric pressure. So instead of low atmospheric pressure in a cyclone, we have a high atmospheric pressure which is created in the center of an anticyclone, where the winds move in an outward direction from the center. Like in a cyclone, the winds were coming inwards, but in an anticyclone, they move outwards. So basically, how an anticyclone is created, it is created when there is a high pressure zone created due to lower temperature, colder temperature, and the winds always blow from high pressure region to a low pressure region. So winds start blowing from the high pressure point to a low pressure point. So in an anticyclonic region, the winds are light, they are not very destructive. They blow in a clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and anti-clockwise direction in the southern hemisphere, just the opposite of cyclones. So the isobars of a high pressure zone or anticyclone is also oval or roughly circular in shape. And in if you see the isobars, there will be at least one close isobar. Anticyclones do not move in a definite direction. They move in a very slow speed and also may drift apart very slowly and gradually. It can disperse in all directions. They sometimes can also be stationary for several days. As the air is a descending air, it is moving in a lower altitude because it's a cold air. When it moves and touches the ground surface, it becomes warm and picks up moisture. Therefore, in an anticyclonic condition, there is less cloudiness and very little rainfall. It is mostly associated with very dry conditions as well as fine summers. In winters, it can be a little cold and foggy if there is an anticyclonic condition because of the accumulation of moisture. So, whenever there is a high pressure zone created, simultaneously there is an anticyclonic condition created. But there is also a belt of permanent anticyclone which is situated mainly over the oceans in the horse latitudes. The horse latitudes are between 30 and 35 degrees north and south of the equator. There are seasonal anticyclonic conditions which are also caused, especially in the winter months when there is low temperatures over the temperate zone. There is a condition of anticyclone which is created, and especially in the regions near the Scandinavian countries like Siberia. So now let's talk about jet streams. Jet streams are very powerful air currents that move from western direction to the eastern direction. So they have a fixed direction and they move at a very high altitude. Their altitude is above 9,000 meters, 9,000 meters to 15,000 meters from above the surface of the earth. So they are high altitude winds which blow above the troposphere. Since their speed is very high, up to 650 kilometers per hour, therefore they are called as jet streams. These jet streams are caused due to differences in air temperatures where the weather fronts are caused. Front is a region where the warm air mass meets the cold air mass. So there are mainly four jet streams. Two are the polar jet streams which are near North Pole and South Pole, and two jet streams are subtropical which lie closer to the equator. So basically, jet streams occur due to the solar radiation and because of the meeting of warm as well as cold air masses. There was no information about jet streams before the World War II. Nowadays, pilots use jet streams as super tailwinds. It is called as super tailwinds because if the plane is moving in the direction of the jet stream, a lot of time is saved and the speed of the plane is also increased, thus also preserving a high volume of fuel. तो आइए अब हम हिंदी में इसी का एक्सप्लेनेशन बताते हैं। चक्रवात क्या है? वो एक ऐसी संरचना है जो कि गर्म हवा के चारों ओर कम वायुमंडलीय दबाव के साथ उत्पन्न होती है। यानी कि एक तरफ से गर्म हवा और दूसरी तरफ से ठंडी हवा आती है। इन दोनों के मिलाप की वजह से गोल आकार का एक चक्रवात या फिर आंधी उत्पन्न होता है। तो चक्रवात एक कम दबाव प्रणाली है या फिर लो प्रेशर सिस्टम है जो कि वामावर्त दिशा में बहती है नॉर्दर्न हेमिस्फीयर में और घड़ी की दिशा में सदर्न हेमिस्फीयर में। तो जिस जगह में तापमान ज़्यादा होती है उस जगह की हवा थोड़ी सी हल्की हो जाने के कारण ऊपर की ओर बढ़ने लगती है, जिसकी वजह से वो कम प्रेशर एक्सर्ट करती है सरफेस के ऊपर, जिसको हम लो प्रेशर सिस्टम कहते हैं। तो चक्रवात वहीं पे उत्पन्न होती हैं। चक्रवातों के प्रभाव से भारी वर्षा और तूफान भी आते हैं और आकाश नीरस और बादलमय हो जाता है। और चक्रवात पवन प्रणाली की दिशा में ही चलते हैं। जहाँ पे वेस्टर्ली विंड्स फ्लो करते हैं या ब्लो होते हैं, वहाँ पे चक्रवात पूर्व दिशा की ओर बढ़ते हैं, क्योंकि वेस्टर्ली विंड्स का डायरेक्शन जो है वो पूर्व दिशा की ओर है, क्योंकि वेस्टर्ली पश्चिम से आई हुई हवा है जो कि पूर्व दिशा में बहती है। सो व्यापारिक हवाएं या फिर ट्रेड विंड्स हमेशा पूर्व दिशा से पश्चिम दिशा की ओर बहते हैं। उसी दिशा में ही साइक्लोन भी बहते हैं जहाँ पे ट्रेड विंड्स या फिर व्यापारिक हवा बहते हैं। तो जब ठंडी वायु राशि और गर्म वायु राशि एक दूसरे की ओर बढ़ती है, तब इनके मिलन तल को वाताग्र कहते हैं या फिर फ्रंट कहते हैं, जहाँ पे साइक्लोन या फिर चक्रवात उत्पन्न होता है। तो चक्रवात को अलग अलग नाम से जाना जाता है, जैसे कि हरिकेन वेस्ट इंडीज़ में, टाइफून्स चाइना में, ऑस्ट्रेलिया में इसको विली विलीज बोलते हैं, और साइक्लोन्स बोलते हैं इंडियन ओशन के आसपास। तो मेनली दो प्रकार के चक्रवात होते हैं, एक है ट्रॉपिकल चक्रवात और दूसरा टेम्परेट होता है। शीतोष्ण चक्रवात या फिर टेम्परेट साइक्लोन बहुत बड़े साइज़ के होते हैं, लेकिन ये हिंसक नहीं होते हैं। उष्णकटिबंधीय चक्रवात काफ़ी हिंसक होते हैं। उष्णकटिबंधीय चक्रवात अधिकतर उष्णकटिबंधीय या उपोष्ण कटिबंधीय क्षेत्रों में महासागरों के अंदर उत्पन्न होती है। ये काफ़ी गतिशील होती है और ये जीवन और संपत्ति को गंभीर रूप से नुकसान पहुंचाती है। यूएसए में टॉर्नेडो या फिर बवंडर नाम का चक्रवात उत्पन्न होता है। बवंडर जो कि आंधी, तूफान, बगुला, तेज़ हवा की एक ऐसी व्यवस्था है जिसमें वो घेरा बांधकर चक्र की तरह घूमती हुई और ऊपर उठती हुई आगे बढ़ती रहती है। बवंडर सर्वाधिक विनाशकारी होते हैं। इसको वर्लविंड या डस्ट डेविल और साइक्लोन या स्टॉर्म भी कहा जाता है। अब हम बात करेंगे प्रति चक्रवात की, जो कि एंटी साइक्लोन होता है। एंटी साइक्लोन या चक्रवात से ठीक विपरीत या अलग होता है। इसके केंद्र या मध्य में उच्च वायु दबाव का क्षेत्र होता है, जबकि परिधि की ओर निम्न वायु दबाव पाया जाता है। यानी कि जो सोर्स होता है जहाँ से वो उत्पन्न होता है, वहाँ पे हाई प्रेशर जोन होता है, जिसकी वजह से विंड्स बाहर की तरफ ब्लो करने लगते हैं। तो इसी के कारण हवाएं केंद्र से परिधि की ओर प्रवाहित होती हैं। प्रति चक्रवात स्थित है मुख्यतः अश्व अक्षांशों के महासागर में, जो कि हॉर्स लैटिट्यूड होता है और वो 30 डिग्रीज नॉर्थ एंड साउथ इक्वेटर के पाया जाता है। सर्दियों में साइबेरिया जैसे बड़े भूभाग पर विशाल मौसमी प्रति चक्रवात बनते हैं।